So it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Michelle Penna. I asked her how to say it, and I'm going to say it wrong. Penaloza. Is that right? Okay, she's nodding. She's close enough. Who's a prolific poet. She's been involved in numerous fellowships and awards and publications. It's all on our website, but also you can Google her, and there's much more information, including some prose writing that she has done and published also. And she's also on our local writers conference board, I think. Yes? Yeah. So the list is long, but I'm going to let her take it over, and that'll give us a little more time. The topic is writing the feels, how poets render emotion. But as she has said, it's also going to apply for prose. I think she's going to start out with more of the poetry, but it'll be valuable for both. So Michelle, I'll let you take it over. I remind people to mute themselves unless you have a question, or which you can put into the chat, and I will be monitoring the chat. But so we eliminate the outside chatter. Okay, Michelle, take it over.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thanks for asking me to be part of this. So the topic is all the feels. So it's, emotion. And Susan also sent me your questions, because I was like, I could talk about lots of different ways of talking about feelings and emotion. So it was helpful to sort of have some folks' specific questions. I was trying to sort of address those things. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're just going to jump in, starting to look at poems. Okay. So I have to be able to share my screen. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, so what do I do here again with this, Doug?
I think if you go to settings, it's allowed you to share.
Security.
Look under security.
Just did it.
Okay, let's see. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, here we go. All right, so we'll take a look at this first poem, and I'll read it aloud. The committee weighs in. I tell my mother I've won the Nobel Prize. Again, she says. Which discipline this time? It's a little game we play. I pretend I'm somebody. She pretends she isn't dead.
Oh,
Yeah, right? Okay, so this is a very small and short poem. We've only got 4 couplets. And I wanted to start off with this one because what I want to begin speaking about is the way that syntax and lineation in poetry create pacing, and they allow for us to reveal information in a specific way. And when I talk about syntax, what I'm referring to is the construction of a sentence. And when I talk about lineation, what I'm talking about is the choices that a poet makes, where to break the line, if the line is an end-stopped line or an enjambed line. So what I mean by that is, well, actually, all of these lines are enjambed. None of them are end-stopped. Okay, so for example, this is a sentence broken up into 2 lines. I tell my mother I've won the Nobel Prize. So that's one sentence in 2 lines. But if it were like this, it would be an end stopped line. Does everyone get what I'm saying there? Yeah, so the breaking of the lines really creates a specific kind of tension. So we already have this premise, the committee weighs in, like, oh, okay, is this like, this could go any number of ways, right? It could be, a school committee, a job search committee, a communist committee. We don't know, right? But then we get the first line. I tell my mother. It's like, oh, okay, there's sort of a wry thing happening here. The committee weighs in, the committee being, the mother and the sort of opinions, the various opinions weighed in here. And then there's this play around of expectation. I tell my mother I've won the Nobel Prize. So there's sort of reverse of understatement happening, but instead bravado. I won the Nobel Prize. And then the tension here again. So there's a funny thing happening. She says, which discipline this time, you multiple Nobel Prize winning daughter of mine or child of mine? It's a little game we play. So there's the play there, but then there's also this kind of thing happening with expectation of like a mother's expectations, like, oh, the Nobel Prize, psh, again? Which one now this time? And then we get the gut punch, right? Because it's starting to ramp up here. It's a little game we play. I pretend I'm somebody. She pretends she isn't dead. And there's all of this. I guess I wanted to show you guys this because all of the things are true at the same time, right? The sort of revealing of emotion. We have all of the wry playfulness and the sort of playing around with expectations of what a mother expects of their child. And then we have also this reenactment of that expectation. And then we know that it isn't possible anymore. It's a thing that doesn't exist anymore. So thinking about that, in poetry, line breaks create opportunities for tension and simultaneity. So that's really a useful and instructive thing when considering how to evoke emotion, because that's often how emotion works, right? We don't usually feel just one thing. It's often more complicated that because life is complicated, we're complicated, relationships are complicated. So often happiness can have a tinge of melancholy. Excitement can have a tinge of anxiety. Anxiety can also have excitement within it. So when a poem breaks lines in specific ways, it allows for all the things to be true at the same time, and allows us to think about the ways and feel things simultaneously, the way our feelings often bleed into each other, into our thinking, into our bodies. So I want to take a look at another example. And I'm going to just scroll with this one to try and reveal more dramatically the lines. Okay, so just look toward the bottom of the page. So this is a Margaret Atwood poem. You fit into me. Okay, we're maybe in like kind of maybe a romantic space, maybe a kind of sexy space. You fit into me. Maybe it's a puzzle situation. You fit into me. Like a hook into an eye. Ooh, okay. Is this like a sharp hook? Is this like a human eye? Or is this like, maybe this is a, with sewing, the hook and eye closure. Maybe this is still some sweetness. A fish hook. Oh, okay. An open eye. Ah, okay. So notice how, again, a very, very short and small poem, but a lot of emotion happening because of the tension created and the playing around with expectation. Also, notice there's no, the word anger, the word rage doesn't show up, and yet I feel it. Do you guys? Because there's a visceral thing happening, there's specificity, and there's an engagement with the body also. But we have a metaphor here, like a hook into an eye, and then it sort of goes away, not like a fish hook, not as an open eye, but a fish hook, an open eye. So notice how the syntax changes there too, how she quadruples down after clarifying. Yeah? Questions so far about what I'm talking about with syntax and lineation, tension, and expectation? Okay, cool. I'm gonna stop sharing. And does everyone have the handout that Susan, no, not yet? Susan, did you send the, not yet? Okay. maybe people can keep refreshing. How many people do have it?
I'm sorry, I don't have a handout. I don't know what you're referring to.
Oh, the thing that I emailed you with all the poems?
I didn't get
thought-
that.
Oh, okay. I thought that's how we were gonna do it. So we could look at it all at the same time. I sent it to you. So I sent it just to you, Susan, and the subject line is poems, and I thought you were gonna send it to everybody. No?
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
sorry,
that's
I didn't
okay.
get anything. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll just go back to screen sharing, and then if anyone has questions, just start talking. Okay. So I'm sorry I won't be able to see you, but we'll, no big deal. We'll just keep going. Does that sound good?
Yeah,
Oh, I see you
just
sent it
one-
today. I didn't, yeah, I just got it today and I hadn't even looked at it. I don't know how to,
Susan, she just sent it like 5 minutes ago.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna send them to you after today was over. I
Oh.
got it. I don't know how to,
Oh, okay. Sorry. I
Al,
thought
you
that,
could open your email and maybe share that.
Okay, may I make a suggestion to everyone? If you do want to speak, would you please be kind enough to raise your hand? Under reactions, I think it is. There's a hand raising thing you can
Okay.
do. And then be sure once you're called on, be sure that you're unmuted.
okay. So I just said go ahead and speak, just because when I start screen sharing, I won't be able to see anybody. So if
Right.
there are people who can see who has their hand raised, let me know, and then we can do it that way. But I'll just
I will
start screen
monitor that.
sharing
Nani,
again.
if I send it to you, I don't know how to share it with everybody. If I send it to you, can you do that?
So I thought we had talked about, if I email it to you, you can just email it to everyone who's here, and then people can open it so that they have it.
Okay, that will be a very slow process.
Okay, well then don't worry about it. We'll just screen share. Sorry, I thought that
Sorry.
when
I
we had
thought you
talked
meant
about
after
it,
the event, I could send it to everybody. So,
okay, gotcha. That's fine. We'll just start screen sharing again. So no big deal. Okay. Okay, here we go. Oop, nope. Wrong one. I let you behind the curtain. Those are my notes.
but I will, if you put questions in the chat, I will pass them on to her along the way.
That might be the better way to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Because yeah, with Zoom, I can only see like 4 people at a time when I'm sharing my screen. Okay, so let's take a look at the next poem. All right, this is The Portrait by Stanley Kunitz. Would someone else like to read it, so I'm not the only person whose voice is happening, or would you guys just like me to read it?
I could read it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. The Portrait. My mother never forgave my father for killing himself, especially at such an awkward time and in a public park that spring when I was waiting to be born. She locked his name in her deepest cabinet and would not let him out, though I could hear him thumping. When I came down from the attic with the pastel portrait in my hand of a long-lipped stranger with a brave mustache and deep brown level eyes, she ripped it into shreds without a single word and slapped me hard. In my 64th year, I can feel my cheeks still burning.
Great, thanks for reading that. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was this idea of the objective correlative and verisimilitude. Let me drop those 2 words in the chat. Have folks heard of those concepts before?
Mhm.
Okay, so the objective correlative is it's essentially like Eliot's way of saying show, don't tell. But I want to make a case for, because we hear that a lot in a lot of writing things: show, don't tell, don't tell, just show. And I think it's really a balance of both things, because sometimes you do just have to tell, like, for example, in this poem, we are told the narrative situation right away, and that's what gives the whole poem its weight. and also the playing around with understatement and subtext as well. My mother never forgave my father. That could go anywhere, right? And then we're told immediately for killing himself. And then we've got understatement, especially at such an awkward time and in a public park that spring when I was waiting to be born. So again, we have all of this information that the speaker has never even met this father, that he's been born into this familial situation, and he's really downplaying, the gravity of it. She locked his name in her deepest cabinet and would not let him out, though I could hear him thumping. So notice again how we don't have words like shame or guilt or grief, but we have these very specific visceral sensory details. Even though it's a metaphoric thing, she locked his name in her deepest cabinet. He's dead, he's not in there. And her deepest cabinet is not an actual cabinet, right? But the speaker could hear him thumping. So even as we have these metaphorical and figurative spaces and objects, they are made visceral through sensory details. When I came down from the attic with the pastel portrait in my hand of a long-lipped stranger with a brave mustache and deep brown level eyes. Okay, so before we even get to more of it, we know that from the narrative situation, and this is, I think, applicable to prose as well, we're being shown here, right? But we're not being told, but we are being told that the speaker is like curious, wants to know, right? Like is digging in the attic and finds evidence of this father. And like we get a visual description. And then she ripped it into shreds without a single word and slapped me hard. And then this is what I love so much about poetry, is that time and space collapse, right? We go fast forward. In my 64th year, I can feel my cheek still burning. So, it's the verisimilitude, which is basically just a fancy word for, trying to describe something as accurately and true as possible. But the idea of it, it's, let me find my specific description here. It's the appearance of being true or real. So really thinking about how all the things we write are made things. We're constructing them to appear true and real, but we're choosing what to say at specific points and what feelings and what visceral things to describe in that moment, right? So sorry, I'm losing all of you here. There we go. So what other things do people notice about the pacing and the subtext in this poem? So I'll stop talking now and try and get other people's thoughts here.
Shame.
Where do you see that? Where's the shame?
It's the silence. It's the silence and the burning cheek.
Yeah, without a single word. It's in the actions, right? Yeah, there's nothing being said, and everything is being said with the slap, and slapped me hard. And notice too, just to geek out with poetic sounds and stuff, the consonants and the assonants of the hard D's and the long A's slapped me hard, right? And notice here, the next line, it's an end stop here, right? And then we have this long sentence and jammed, and then we get the hard stop with the slap.
Mm.
Yeah. So we get shame. Yeah.
I also feel very strong anger. She locked his name in her deepest cabinet and would not let him out, though I could hear him thumping.
Yeah. Yeah. Notice how like there are no, because we're wanting to focus on feelings. There are no feelings named, right? There's no, the word anger and grief and shame, they don't appear here, but they are shown. And it's not just shown, they're like viscerally described so that we can feel them, right? The thumping, the hard slap. Even this, like, I came down from the attic with the pastel portrait in my hand. I just see like a little kid kind of carefully handling, how pastel like will crumble or run if your hand like swipes it a certain way, like it, there's like a carefulness in that too. Yeah, what else? Anything else that people notice or see? I'm rushing this more than I normally would because it's already 5:29 and I want to get to different exercises, but
Go ahead,
all of
John.
these. Oh, go ahead. Yes.
John, go ahead. You
Yeah.
got to
I
unmute.
am. Here I am. Oh, it's Mary Ellen. I like the position of the word still because, still burning, because I can still feel my cheek. I still can feel my cheek, but the position of that word still, I think, is just very well put. Just, it leaves one with the still burning, with that feeling that it is still very happening for this person.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that poetry is able to collapse time and space and then also to bring like simultaneity to the moments throughout the poem, but then it
Yes.
also is a continuance,
Mhm.
right? It doesn't end, still burning.
Yes.
And so it brings up syntax for sure.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Great observation. John, you had something?
Oh, I was looking at that same last line, thinking that this was a long-lasting. That slap had a long effect.
Yep.
His experience or her experience, his experience was not a momentary experience. It was a lifelong experience.
Right, totally. And that kind of brings me back to the title, right? The portrait. So it could be, this portrait, of course, but it's also a portrait of a family. It's a portrait of grief. It's a portrait of a child born into a family after a suicide, So it's not just this literal portrait, but a larger thing.
It's also a portrait of the mother.
Yes.
And the thing that I notice as I read it is that a child often looks like a parent, and her anger is shared with the son who came from the father. It was a way of passing along that anger, or attributing that anger to the child that she had for the father.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that for sure. Yeah.
So I have a take on it where, he doesn't know his father, but he wants to.
Yeah,
He comes down from the attic with the portrait in his hand, with some limited amount of description. And in that moment, his mother rips it into shreds and slaps him hard. And this is now the entire biography of his father, delivered through these two linked events. And so 64 years later, he's not only still feels the slap, but it's still all he knows about his father.
Absolutely. Yeah. see how much we're all getting from, and there are like, there's multiple ways to read this too. It's not just one way, because it's it's specific enough that it is singular, right? But it's also open enough that we can get different things out of it.
I'm particularly struck with the word brave in the middle of this poem. His brave mustache. It just jumped out at me given the context.
Yeah.
The suicide. Anyway, it's just an interesting way to describe the mustache, definitely, but something about his perspective on his father, which was interesting to me given, like I said, the context.
Right. Yeah. Well, it complicates. It's not, when in using that diction, that specific word, there is a staving off of judgment in a way from the child. So I have a couple of hands here, Violet and Betty.
Not Violet. Go ahead, Joycelyn.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I don't think the shame in this poem is the son's shame. I think it's the mother's shame. It's the mother's shame that drives her anger and what have you toward him. And so it just doesn't seem to me that shame is what he's feeling. He's feeling the stinging of the violence and her shame and what have you. So anyway, that's it.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to say that without saying anything, in the silence that's here, that there's a lot of love, because the mother locked him up in the deepest cabinet she could and wouldn't let him out. It's like putting that life deep in her heart. And when her son comes down from the stair, it's the shock of seeing the face and recovering that disturbing the sacredness of this father's face and being, that causes her also to slap the son. I think it comes from a deep love that she can't express any longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that brings up a good point about what I was saying before about the other two poems as well, is the simultaneity, right? There's not just one feeling here. There's not just one narrative even. There's multiple things happening simultaneously. All these things are true at the same time. Yeah.
So there's some things in the chat. I think probably it would work best if everybody went ahead and read what was in the chat, but there is one comment, one question, which is, how do we know the gender?
Stanley
We
is a male
don't.
poet.
We absolutely don't. I was using interchangeably child and he, but we don't know the gender of the child.
Except that it's Stanley Kunitz, and Stanley was known for writing mostly first person.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I would urge everybody to read the comments in the, it seems to be well for people to raise their hands. So
yeah, I have the chat pulled up. So yeah, thank you all for sharing.
And also I did send the poems to almost everybody. There are 3 people that I didn't have their email on my own personal email. So, but the rest of you got them.
Okay, thanks, Susan. Thanks for working on that. Okay, I think we can, because it's already 5:37. Okay, so we're gonna go to the next poem. So all of these, like we could talk about all of these for a long time. Like you could teach a whole class on just this poem. So I'm just trying to fly through some examples here, but here is another one. So let me pull up here we go. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is with the idea of, let me just look at this real quick, with the idea of the objective correlative, of this idea of like a matrix of objects that convey or evoke specific emotion. A really kind of maybe a dumb way to think about it, to remember, is If you can't drop it on your foot, it's not a concrete thing. So you can't drop grief on your foot, but you can drop a pastel portrait on your foot. You can drop a cabinet on your foot. You see what I'm saying? So thinking about how to render things in sensory detail and specificity to create that kind of visceral situation. So let's take a look at this poem. Would someone like to read this for us?
I'll
Okay,
read it.
great. Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome.
To waste my hands. 3 years ago, I stood on the dock near my father's house while the small shark suffocated and was killed. He was like an angle called up from the purple sea, and the air smashed into him like an anvil. And his muscles sank desperately into the ribs. Terrible. Terrible, 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 terrible to watch him that way. More terrible to waste my hands just standing.
Beautiful reading. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm going to not talk this time, and I'm going to let you tell me what you're seeing here in terms of what we've been talking about: syntax, lineation, sensory details. How are the nouns and verbs working here?
Well, I'm having trouble understanding why it's to waste my hands, and he was like an angle, where as opposed to wash my hands, and he was like an angel. Was there a
Okay, well,
typo?
no, it's not a typo. Let's talk about what's, yeah. So you're having trouble understanding. Oh, maybe it is angel, not angle. I thought you were saying this one, anvil. Let me pull up the book. I might have typed that wrong. But that might be angel, actually. Good call.
While you're looking that up, Violet has a question, also the next question.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
it is angel. Thank you for catching that typo. Of course, the man with the halo finds that. Okay, so, and then what was the other thing that you were having trouble with?
To waste my hands.
That
Because
definitely is not a typo.
more terrible to waste my hands just standing. Huh.
Okay, so other folks.
I think Joycelyn has her hand up.
I don't actually.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it's left over.
You need
Yeah.
to remove the hand, Joycelyn, at the bottom of your screen. It says drop your hands.
Got it. Got it. Thank you.
Oh, so Karen had the question, why the and is the ampersand and not the word and? Great question. I mean, I think it's just a stylistic thing. I feel like people like the immediacy of it, or I don't really know, honestly. I think some people just do that sometimes in the way that some people like dashes or commas or, you know, just a different punctuation. Hands wasted, not wasted. The hands might have released the shark. Yeah, that's how I read it too. It's not about washing your hands. It's that you're just watching this angel called up from the purple sea and it dying. And we get like, you know, how we don't see the way that it's dying. We do a little bit, but we see it and we hear it and we feel it through this repetition, right? And also the premise of the 3 years ago and still this.
Yeah.
2 years ago, I stood on the dock near my father's house while the small shark suffocated and was killed. And then we get the description. He was, yeah, I'm just going to read it again because I feel like it's worth hearing again. He was like an angel called up from the purple sea, and the air smashed into him like an anvil, and his muscles sank desperately into the ribs. Terrible, 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 terrible to watch him that way. More terrible to waste my hands just standing. So it's not about washing your hands. It's about that her hands or this person's hands weren't at all used, right? A waste that you are powerless and must watch. Yeah. Yes, we don't usually associate sharks with angels or I guess angles, with that fin, but that was the typo. But oh, interesting. The ampersands are symbolic call outs about the shark. Can you say more, Henry? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's just like a bullet point. They're talking about Anne was killed and the air smashed and
Uh-huh. So
and
like
also,
emphasizing the catalog of things.
and the waste my hands. In other words, regret that he didn't stop it, I think.
Yeah, and that's a great observation about how it went on for a long time, because the agony is stretching on with the terrible. And that repetition, I mean, usually we don't have a word that appears that much in a poem. It's not a long poem, but this is probably like 15% of the poem is the word terrible, right? But the repetition of it over and over again, and then also the line break here. I don't know, the way that it was read, you can hear that, like that first terrible, and then watching it, like as I read it, I can see the shark dying and moving around and thrashing about, even though I'm not being shown that in the words in the poem. I'm being made to feel that because of this repetition over and over and over again.
Great.
I don't know. Do other people get that sense?
Yeah, well, it's a great representation of shame.
Interesting. Yeah, for sure. It gets harder to say it so many times. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and you can it sort of starts feel like the experience of reading it. Like, I don't know if the other person who read it out loud was feeling this, but when you repeat that word so many times, it sort of rises up from your stomach after a while. It starts to be in your body, that word.
So we've had hands up from Rowan and Windflower for a while.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Thanks. Go ahead. Why don't we start with Rowan?
Hi, thanks. I just, when I read this, I feel like waste of my hands is just complete inaction. This is just completely, I wanted to save this shark. I wanted to do something. I'm completely, ashamed that I didn't do anything. And the word terrible, to me, it almost feels like it diminishes because the shark is diminishing. And the word terrible is the dying shark. Like it's just terrible, terrible, terrible. It just is the shark wasting, the word is wasting. That's kind of how I read it. Of course, I could see reading it, it just is gurgling. I could totally relate to that as far as reading it out loud. Right. But that's how it felt to me reading it.
Yeah, I can totally see that the risk of repetition of a single word that much in a poem to take up this much space is that the word begins to lose its meaning. And that actually is what is happening in the poem too, right? Like, it is terrible to be seeing this, and yet they're not doing anything about it, the person who's watching this. And so it is, in fact, like it's like shame, and also the reality of our desensitization, right? We're desensitized to pain and grief and violence. And the longer and more we witness it, right? That's like psychologically known, and also like anecdotally, I think we can say that. I don't know if it's a child, the speaker. I mean, it could be, but to me, it reads like an adult. Because if you're a child, I mean, I guess with if your parents are separated, your father's house, but to me, it was someone who was visiting their father. And but I think either way, yes, terrible repeated makes it sound like gulping for air, for sure. I think either way, the poem, it still has a similar effect, whether or not it's an adult or child speaker. Oh, I'm sorry, Windflower, you had something and I totally.
That's okay. I mean, I was focused on the terrible too. And I was curious about the number of times, but the more I read it and thought about it, I also felt it made the last line that much more powerful, more terrible, and to waste my hands just standing. And this is 3 years ago this happened, and it's still that feeling. And I feel in many ways it's a metaphor for how we stand around watching the destruction, of the planet, of the animals, and we to me, this was like a moment that is iconic.
Yeah, emblematic.
Yeah, emblematic, the way we are in this world.
Yeah,
So,
I totally see that. Absolutely. I think too, you saying that made me think about the verb, the diction here, the choices in repetition of, so 3 years ago I stood, and then this is again like that last poem, it's continuing to happen. It's a gerund, right? More terrible to waste my hands just standing. It's the person is still continuing to stand, right? Ongoing. So that's kind of a cool, I love how with poems, even though you've taught them or if you read them a number of times, every time you go back, you find something new, which is cool and exciting. Yeah, maybe my father's house could be church, though. I mean, if I were writing like a grad paper on it, maybe I would go there. But I think that it's like what's here is enough to get what we're talking about, I guess. The acting, the repetition of words can be more inward. The repetition changes the intensity of the word, becomes more intense, not less. Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on who's reading it. I think I can see both, that it gets more intense, and then it also, you can be desensitized to it. And again, that's what's so great about this poem, is that there's multiple ways to read it. We can have a longer ongoing conversation about it. Okay, I see Nancy's hand.
Well, I just briefly, I was really struck by the waste my hands, as other people have referenced, but also the angel called up from the purple sea is such a image. And that would go if we were going to go with the image of this sanctuary that we've been put in, really called Earth, that we've treated so irreverently. But it is, thank you, it's a powerful.
Yeah. Well, and then actually that makes me think about with the last John's comment about my father's house.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. I think for me, like, I think sometimes I hesitate to like I don't know, maybe that's just me. I think I want to take the poem for what's there, as opposed to what I would necessarily apply to it from like my own viewpoint, I guess, if that makes sense. But yeah, I can totally see those things. Absolutely. Maybe the first time a shark has been referred to as an angel. Oh, well, there are angel sharks, aren't there? Isn't that a kind of shark?
That's true.
So maybe not. Okay. Yes, Jonathan.
Yeah, I was just going to say that even if it's, if the religious overtones there are secondary or even tertiary, I often think about those when you stumble onto something in something I'm writing, and you go, oh, well, that's kind of doesn't exactly work, but it's close, and it's an echo at least, of and it follows the theme, so I think it works.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Windflower, did you have something, or is your hand just still up? Oh, okay. Okay. So, okay, we have, it's 5:53. I'm over my time, actually. So actually, you have the poems that are still here. You'll get them in your email, but we're running out of time. So I'm just going to launch into the generative writing exercises I have for you. But just to say quickly about these two poems, I think this one in particular will probably be instructive for the prose writers that are here. I feel like this poem you could teach an entire seminar about, probably. And then again, more thinking about how there's stuff that we're told, but we're also shown. And so to not stick too close to that adage of you have to show, you can't just tell. Sometimes it's useful to just say what it is that's happening. I think sometimes we get too caught up in oh, I'm telling. It's okay to tell sometimes too. So anyway, I'm going to stop sharing and we'll do some quick writing exercises. So does everyone have something to write on and something to write with? Okay, and we'll just do these fast. Okay, so I'm going to give you an adjective, and without using that word, I'd like you to communicate that adjective via gestures. Try not to use any other adjectives, but use precise verbs and nouns. Okay, so I'll put those directions in the chat too. So let's do joy. Since we've been talking about anger and shame and all that, let's do joy. So there's the directions. Joy. Joyful is the adjective, sorry. Joy is a noun. Joyful is the adjective. Try to represent joyfulness or joyful as an adjective via gestures. Okay, I'll just give you another minute for that one. Try to come up with as many gestures to describe or to represent the adjective joyful. Okay, I'm going to give you another adjective. Ready? Next one, also gestures. Kind. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going through these very fast. So let's try a different one. I'm going to give you an emotion, and I would like you to describe a setting or a room for that emotion. So I'll put that in the chat. Okay, the emotion is melancholy. Okay, I'll give you another emotion. And this time we'll do an emotion rendered in color via a catalog of objects. I'm just layering the tasks on. So let's see. Someone else think of an emotion. I'm having trouble thinking of them. Someone call out an emotion. Hesitant. Okay, there's our emotion. Hesitant in color via a catalog of objects. Does that make sense? It's kind of a weird one. Let's see how it goes. Hesitant.
Okay, I'll come now. I'll leave.
Okay. Okay, we'll just give you another 30 seconds for that one. And let's see how people did. Does anyone want to share any of their examples that they came up with? What about someone just share one for joyful, a joyful gesture?
She threw her hands into the sky. Her head shook in the wind of her heart, waving her body like music in summer.
Nice. Great. Okay, what about kind? Gesture for kind.
Stroking the rippling sobs in the child's back.
Oh, lovely. Nancy, you had one too? I saw your hand.
She focused her eyes gently upon his amputated legs and his face, tired from pushing himself to a seat beside her.
Great, thank you. Okay, what about the melancholy as a room or a setting? Yeah, okay, let's see, Jonathan and Betty and Chrissy.
Sitting on the downed tree that hold the boat.
Great. Okay, Betty, Chrissy, and Windflower.
Holding herself in a cloudless chamber, purple hooded.
Nice. Okay, Chrissy, and then Windflower.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
An amber colored light, a lamp in a velvet,
Nice.
scarlet velvet couch.
Great textures.
An
Okay.
amber light.
Great, thanks. Windflower, and then Susan.
Grand piano sitting in a corner covered with dust.
Oh, lovely. Great. Susan.
The green of rotting vegetables was upon every wall.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. These are great. Okay, and then hesitant. Did anyone get to that one? For the color. Anyone we haven't heard from that wants to share? Okay. Jonathan and Betty?
Holding a hand over my eyes, it was too bright to look.
Okay. Okay, nice. Betty?
Gray stones, unbalanced, wobble.
Nice. For that one, I had white walls. Oh, someone's dog is very upset.
Can you mute Joycelyn?
It's Joycelyn.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's do just one more exercise and then I'll say goodbye to you. I know I'm over time, but I like exercises and I think you guys like them too. Okay, so this one is different in that, okay, so just everyone, I just need 5 adjectives and we'll write them down as people say them and I'll repeat them and put them in the chat. So just start calling out adjectives.
Deranged.
Deranged, delectable. Is that what I heard? Deranged, delectable. They don't all have to be D's. Just
no.
saying. Deranged, delectable. I need 3 more.
Bountiful.
Plentiful.
Okay.
Whoa, someone else said one.
Puzzled.
Puzzled. Okay, one more.
Satisfied.
Satisfied. Okay, great. Okay, and then I need 5 nouns. preferably from people we haven't heard from yet. Nouns, just literally nouns. Just say anything.
Angel.
Angel. Okay. Next.
Rocking.
Rocket. And
Rocking chair.
Oh, rocking chair.
Okay, rocking chair. Okay. What? Someone else said something?
Dog.
Karen?
I said
Dog.
dog.
Dog. Okay, and two more.
Column.
Column.
I
And
didn't get, what is that one?
I'll repeat them. So
Okay.
I have angel, rocket chair, rocking chair, dog, column, and what was the last one?
Camera.
Camera. Okay. Okay. So in your adjective list, you have deranged, delectable, plentiful, and puzzled and satisfied. In your noun column, you have angel, rocking chair, dog, column, and camera. Now, what I would like you to do is draw a line from, just connect them. Don't think about it and just connect them. So like, for example, and try to connect them to ones that are unexpected, right? So like plentiful angel, maybe satisfied column, deranged rocking chair, or whatever. Just do it in your own way, okay? Connect the dots. And then I will leave you with the exercise to write a scene or a poem or a dialogue in which those are paired in that way. Because one of the things people were concerned about that we didn't really get to in my talk was cliche. So a way of working out of cliche is to like try and put diction together that you normally wouldn't. So delectable column, puzzled angel. That's kind of more interesting because, you know, normally you would probably be like puzzled dog, satisfied dog, but like anyway, so just play around. That's kind of a fun, when I get stuck, sometimes I'll just write columns of adjectives, columns of nouns or verbs, and just play around until something sparks something interesting. So I will leave you with that. I hope you had a lovely time. Thank you for your questions, comments, and yeah, have a great rest of your Sunday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Thanks a lot, Michelle.